Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. Today I am with Team Trese, Tanya Yuson, Shanty Harmayn, Zig Marasigan, and Mihk Vergara. So thank you everyone for joining me on the Comics Cube on the channel.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for
having
having
us.
Yeah, what they said.
It's nice because I've had Budge on the show several times to talk about the comic and what he thinks of the show, but you didn't actually work on the show. You guys worked on the show. So Tanya, my first question is for you, since I know this all started with you, and I've asked you this question, in a very short interview. So maybe
Correct.
just to expand upon it, how did it feel? What was the journey like bringing Trese to Netflix? I know it's been a long, hard road.
Well, actually, I'm so glad Shanty is here because I keep talking about her, but this journey would not have happened if Shanty and I weren't working on it together. So I found the comic book initially, but when I started talking to Shanty about it, between our experiences, she knows everybody pretty much around Asia and internationally as well. And I was coming from LA. When we picked up the book and we looked at it, we knew it had potential. And her being Indonesian, she could see that the
Oh, there we go.
potential extended outside of just like a Philippine audience. So we set off to we don't know if it's going to work. We know the story is great. We know that it can be adapted. We know pretty much how to do it, but it's like, who's going to pick it up? And so that was basically the bulk of our journey, in the 10 years we were trying to set it up. And that took place in Cannes and Frankfurt,
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong and LA, Manila,
Worldwide.
Worldwide.
literally worldwide.
Literally.
And finally we landed, at the right home, which was, anime at Netflix. So we've been working on it so long that when it actually happened, when it was announced in Singapore, we both looked at each other and then we started involuntarily crying. We're like, this is weirdly emotional, but it's actually happening.
My favorite anecdote that has been told about you discovering the series is that you started with book 3, had no idea it was book 3.
Correct.
And then when Budge told you it was book 3, you said, that was book 3?
Yeah. Literally, I did not read the spine. I was like, oh, but it was such a great read. I was like, oh, it's like how you watch Star Wars. You start with A New Hope and then you work your way.
That's a good analogy, I think.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Mostly good analogy.
Exactly.
Star Wars
Work
started
your way to the
before.
prequels, but Star Wars, you start with A New Hope.
Yeah. We don't know how to count in Team Trese.
Now I'm wondering if this would have if Trese would have gotten this far if you had read book 1 first.
That was my next question, actually.
Right?
There's an alternate
Maybe not.
reality where you read book 1 first. How do you think
And
that
I'm like,
reality goes?
not so much. No, I would have. It would have been good because it's just that I now knew more background coming into it. But I do wonder, it's kind of like if you watched it, it's like watching it cold without any setup, right? That's, that's how reading book 1 would have been. But you get into it pretty quickly. It's not, it's case of the week. It's just 3 where he deviates and he's going in depth. They're going in depth in terms of how did she get to be where she is?
Sure.
So I don't think it changes the outcome of picking it up. Let's put it that way.
I'll get back to the question about structure later. But Shanty, how did, as someone who's not Filipino, what was it about Trese that you thought resonated with you?
So basically, what you need to know is I was living in Manila at that time.
Okay.
So it comes from a point of view of an Indonesian producer who was living in Manila at that time. And actually, when I met with Tanya, it was my 3rd year, and I was actually about to leave. So I believe in serendipity that this is all meant to be, So when we met, it was supposed to be a coffee just to discuss, and it ended up to be 5 hours, like coffee, lunch, coffee, and then a trip
to National Bookstore
to find another book. just to give the context. But when I see it, when I read it, I was like, oh wow, there's many things that is similar to, it is very Filipino, but is as an Indonesian very much similar to our mythology and our folklore that I can relate to it. Like, oh, that is, that's like kuntilanak. Oh, that's like this. So I can recall, and I thought this would resonate like clearly with other Southeast Asian audience. And so I told Tanya, like, this is great. This is not just Philippine, this is international. But that's where our journey starts, how to set it up. That's the challenge, I would say, basically.
Can you give me an example? What's a similar thing to an Indonesian mythology?
So basically, like we have many different. It's not like are they the same, but we have like typical like aswang or manananggal, but not like specific. So like the other day, I was talking to my mom, who's 83 years old, and she watched Trese. And the funny part is I kept telling her like, oh, watch Trese, but of course she only watched because she saw Tanya's face on Netflix thumbnail. And then the fantastic part, I don't want to tell it from my part, I want to tell it from my mom's part. So it's like, oh wow, she watched it. And then we talk about aswang. And then she said, that's Swangi. And and where she comes from, that's Swangi. And then I told the gang, I said, oh my God, my mom said it's a Swangi from where the island where she comes from. Like, so it's that, you see. So that's the
So there's definitely a connection in the thread.
Yeah.
Like for Manananggal, for them it's kuntilanak, which is the same as like a beautiful woman in the day, but the difference is she's got a peg in her back.
Yeah.
And then when you take it out, she just becomes this like monster that wants to feed on babies. I think, right? It's
Yeah. But probably doesn't do that whole splits in half thing, huh?
No, but she's got like this peg. I don't know where does that peg come from? Who put it there? Did she put it there herself? We don't know.
And Shanty, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Indonesia has like a ton of shapeshifters.
Yes,
like you guys have so many shapeshifters that just like our how we represent the tikbalang there, or some
Or the sigbin
in the show.
Yeah. And actually, I again from my mom, there's also a similar creatures from where she comes from. She comes from an island in eastern part of Indonesia, which is southern part of Philippines. And so when she mentioned all this, it's like, oh my God, this is so similar.
Yeah.
And she kept
curses,
saying,
right? I think curses are also
and she said, like,
curses and Chris's.
Exactly. And she said, like, remember that Uncle William? Yeah. His family is Swangi. I was like, oh, his family is Aswang. I'm like, okay, I need to digest it.
That's
Or
awesome.
related to the aswang.
Or is it?
Exactly. So these type of stories, and then so that's where that's my reaction for when Tanya present me with the book. So and then
I just want to tell this story. I have a coworker who I think he's in his early 50s, and he now lives in the US. He now lives in Boston. He told me watching the first episode, he ended up crying because he remembered his grandpa. Because it resonated with the stories that his grandpa used to tell him when he lived in the province as a kid. So that's the kind of effect you guys are having on.
I mean, that I love.
It's always
hearing
great to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That it resonates with them on a personal level, and it triggers like good memories rather than nightmares, which is always nice to hear.
Yeah. For such a gory show. It's like,
For such a gory show.
Oh, it's warm and fuzzy.
His grandpa. Stab. Oh.
It reminds me so much of family.
Right.
Zig and Mihk,
Also-
I don't know which one of the two of you got roped in first. So my next question
Like
is,
we're real kambal together.
together.
We're kind of a package deal.
Inseparable.
so
Not by
two
design.
questions. Did you know the comic beforehand, and how did you get roped into the show? Roped in talaga.
Yeah. Yes and yes. No, we always love telling the story because it is predicated on the fact that Zig and I were so ready to say no to Tanya for the offer. because we worked with Tanya before in a previous show, and that's when we sort of hit it off, and had like this awesome working relationship. And we'd seen, this is like a couple of years before she roped us in, as you say. And so we kept in touch, like we'd have drinks every so often, and then she works for she does a lot of work with this prod house that is known for reality shows. And again, I just like to say, it's like nothing against reality shows, but when Tanya asked us, like, hey guys, I've got this show coming up, I want to meet you and like lay it on you guys, see if you're interested. Zig and I were so sure it was going to be a reality show. It's like, without a shadow of a doubt, like Tanya's gonna ask us about.
And we're not
one
dissing reality shows, okay? We're not.
We're
It's
not.
just
But they were.
not our
But they
thing. Not our
were.
thing.
It's, at the time, it wasn't our bag, right? It's like it's not something we wanted to do at the time. So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
how are we gonna? So like Tanya invited us out to dinner. So okay, here's the game plan. We'll eat dinner, eat that free meal, and then we'll let Tanya down easy. It's like a breakup. Like
Where I buy
ready-
dinner.
where Tanya buys dinner. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't do this, but thanks for the food. Yeah. And then we got there, and then Tanya said the famous
Three
three
magical
words.
words.
I said, I have
magical
three words for you guys. I'm like, comic book, Netflix, Trese. And I was like, and they're like, huh. I
Yeah, so she was shocked
expecting-
that we weren't rejoicing.
We didn't
But
flip
we-
the table. Yeah.
But we were just stunned. Like we were stunned because we didn't think our names could ever be associated, one with Trese, two with Netflix, three with anime.
Yeah.
That's
well,
gonna happen within our
Freaking
lifetime.
anime,
You know,
man.
like,
Yeah.
It was
It's
such
like-
an insane idea that no, she's pulling a prank on us. She's the one who's gonna say no.
Yeah.
This
No,
is all
I'm
I wish
kidding.
I-
It's a
you know,
reality
I-
show.
I wish
It's
I had
starting
filmed
now.
it. Now I wish we had filmed it. But
It's like does not compute.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like
It's
it
like
really
Rainbow
it
Wheel of Death.
short-circuited us. Yeah, it's like, sorry, we're loading. Like we'll get back to you in a week.
And then when they told me, I'm like, what did you think I was going to ask you? They explained the reality show. Have I ever done a reality show? They're like, no, but
No.
still.
Yeah. So there is another timeline where Tanya offered us a reality show.
Correct.
The
And they
same
turned me
timeline
down.
That's the
And
same
they leave me
timeline where
with
she
the
reads
bill.
book one first.
where she reads
Correct.
book one first. It's like, I'm just gonna make a reality show out of this.
Man.
Right.
Now because of our discussion, I'm imagining Doctor Strange and that one reality
like-
where
Yeah,
Tessa
it's
becomes
like-
an anime, and then like all the permutations, and this
Yeah,
is it,
it's
guys.
like-
This is the
It's like
This
he's
is the
just
reality.
nodding. This is the one.
So what? You guys, once everything, once
Yeah,
your
no, we
brains
said yes.
processed
Like we
everything,
were the
said yes?
easiest get in this whole damn thing. I'm pretty sure it's like in this 10-year journey. It's like, you want to do this? Yup.
no.
Yeah.
It was like Yep.
Yup.
There was like
It's
the
that.
stunned moment first.
I
So
think,
easy.
I kind of remember going, they're like, huh? I'm like, do you not want to do it? And they're like, no.
It's just like, and then it's like, all right. And Tanya did the bill. Bought us dinner, and we said yes.
All
You know?
that and the free meal.
Yeah.
Were you guys?
It's like-
where did you guys feel intimidated at all? Because Trese was a pretty critically acclaimed comic book. So
Oh
Now
yeah,
we
we'd
do.
be lying. We'd be
Yeah,
lying.
we're intimidated
We were.
all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you may not, like we are like ducks under here. Like we are swimming furiously under like a calm surface.
But to answer your
Even on the Zoom
earlier
call, like you
question-
can't see my feet,
Yeah.
but they're like,
But to answer your question, yeah, we were familiar with the comic. So before the project, and it's funny because my first experience with the comic wasn't even with one of the mainline stories. It was one of the spin-off stories, actually, and then that's what led me to the mainline stories. I think it was like Underground Pass. I
Yeah.
can't remember. Yeah, that was the first one I actually read, and then when I realized that she was a much larger character, and this was years before like we found out about it. So So yes, we were intimidated, but I knew if we said it out aloud, we would just collapse. So we just
Yeah.
like
It's one of those things
kept it
like
inside.
don't jinx it. It's like you're going home. It's like, oh, I bet there's no traffic today. It's like don't freaking say that, because if you do, there's gonna be traffic. It's one of those things. Curses and curses. Which, dude.
But now that it's
Uh,
done, it's okay to say it.
Yeah.
So so tell me something. Did you guys? How did you guys conceptualize the show? Did it come before the episode count, or was the episode count given to you before everything?
Again,
It
that's
was
all
pretty.
Tanya and Jay.
It was pretty much given to us because, as I mentioned before, this was a risk for Netflix. It was a gamble they were taking. So to mitigate it, 6 was kind of the number we settled at like half hours. And then talking to Jay, after he had read it, like Shanty and I had done different versions in the 10 years we were pitching, and we were pitching it live action. So we had done different permutations of it as a series, it as a film, and we put together. We showed kind of Jay what we'd been working with, and he, after reading also like all the books on the way to Manila, he kind of formulated where he thought the broad strokes could go. And we designed a recce so that they could, he and Jojo could get familiar with Manila so that they could do stuff like this, because unless you live in it, it's hard to kind of see it. And during the traffic, which was the bonus, we kind of had our
Yeah.
map out of the broad strokes, and then we started Story Summit, and then we filled out all the little bits, like all of us in the room, like Mihk, Zig, us,
Yeah.
Jay,
Like a real
and
legit
Trese.
writer's room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's collaboration, but we definitely benefited from Jay's experience, working
Yeah.
on such great shows. So he knows
And
what the big beats are, visually what it's gonna look like, where you want to get to. And so we basically worked around that.
Yeah, it was kind of a bombshell for me and Mick when Tanya mentioned that Jay was attached.
yeah, we're super like
Because I mean, I guess
Yeah.
anyone
Young
who follows
Justice,
the
man.
animation. Yeah, dude. So when his name
It's
was
like the
dropped,
guy from
that's
Young
when I was like,
Justice!
dude, we watch this shit. I'm sorry. Can we curse on this?
Yes, yes, you can.
Oh yeah, all right, great.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
it's,
sorry.
like, it's the guy that
Yeah,
Young
that
Justice.
was
Right?
a
It's like, hey,
good
it's
thing.
Jay. Be cool, be cool.
Be cool, be cool. How did you get Jay attached to it?
That was actually John
From
Dardarian. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Shanti.
So from Netflix, basically, John, who's in charge of anime, was basically proposing to us and say, what about working with Jay? And then, said like, this is Jay. So Jay has done this, and we're like, yeah, sure. And then vice versa. I think Netflix also approached Jay and said, like, look, there's this IP basically managed and owned by this like Tanya and myself. Is this something that you would be interested? So Netflix basically checked both parties. Is this something that they wanted to do and wanted to work together with? And that's how.
And when we had our call with Jay, after we'd ironed it out, we realized we were pretty much on the same page in terms of what we wanted to create with it, which is great.
That's great. So you guys say this was a risk for Netflix, but you guys realize you're getting one more episode than He-Man and the Masters of the Universe,
I mean,
And 2 more than Castlevania.
and 2 more than Castlevania.
right.
Season 1.
We were working on, we were coming on the success of Castlevania being like a non-Japanese anime. And
Yeah.
so it was a risk. So, it was 6 was already the push, because Castlevania had 4.
Yeah.
Four.
So that's the concession is, okay, fine, you get 6. So we worked it. We
Yeah.
worked that 6 to
Yeah.
make sure like you get your money's worth.
Boy, did we work.
Watching the 6 episodes.
Yeah.
How did you guys end up choosing to structure the show the way that you did? Because you took several stories from the comics, basically in each one 2 stories from the comics, and then you stitched them together. How did you manage to work that out? Like, how did you decide which ones to put together and whatnot?
From the on the big picture, and maybe you guys can jump in to fill in sort of episode wise when we were starting to pick it. But from the big picture, we knew that, and for those who haven't watched, but the spine of it would be the origin and leading into Datu Talagbusao. So we knew that was where we were leading to. And that we were thinking about, okay, this being the first season, it's set up, but not complete setup. Like, what were the iconic things we wanted to put in? So obviously, we always thought 13 stations would be great as an entry point for the city. And Shanty and I had pitched it, and Jay had the same sense of it when he read it. He's like, this is great, because, and Jay loved like that overhead shot with the aswang, like devouring the people on the tables. And of course, for me, like for episode 1, I said Murder on Balete Drive, because that's the first story.
course.
It should be in the first episode. So it's a matter of tying it together and finding. And then for the others, and the guys can speak to that, it was, what made sense to pair together that could lead us to the bigger arc still.
Yeah, in sort of service to Alex's arc. Like, I mean, as Tanya mentioned, it's the origin leading up to Talagbusao, but it's really checking in on Alex in the present and the past every episode, making sure we set up the themes that we needed to set up, and like her journey as a character to get us sort of a sense of where she is right now, which is, and like a big part of that is her relationship to her dad.
Of course,
because she inherits this role from him, and it's like she's the new like sheriff in town, and she has to like clean up the joint and do that. So it was important for all 3 of us and Jay to, like, when we were mapping it out, to like track that sort of journey, like how because we jump in timelines a lot, so we had to track like chronologically. It's like, okay, Balete Tree, she comes out, what's she feeling, how many years was it before, like we know her, well, before she turns into Trese, we see at episode 1 like kicking ass, like her vulnerabilities, and basically we've said it in other interviews, like when we adapted the comics thing, we're doing stuff that wasn't, we were doing stuff in between panels, basically, expanding beats, expanding emotions, expanding context for in service of this like big picture story.
How did you guys decide what to change? Like, because it's as opposed to just to stitching 2 stories together, you also change certain things. Like, Hank is a much more defined character in the anime than in the comics. How did you guys? So that's just one example.
It's the nature of the medium. For one, I think it's because Mihk mentioned a very good point where we needed to fill in the gaps that the panels weren't giving us, and also Kajo and Budge were also discovering these things as they were writing, but we literally only had 1 season to tell it. It's interesting you brought up actually Castlevania or say He-Man, Masters of the Universe, because I think we're very different in the sense that at least Castlevania never really had an iteration. I mean, they're based on video games, and that's actually why I watched it. But it's very actually loose in terms of how much Mark Millar could fill in. Or in He-Man, where there's a very established lore, so the only challenge was Warren Ellis was to kind of reimagine He-Man. Here we had the responsibility of introducing a completely unknown character. Property to not only to the Philippines in general, but to the wider audience. And then 2, to introduce Filipino culture. And so it was great having Jay on board, because he had experience about how to adapt, because he's like DC all the way, right, in terms of this. So he understood
Marvel. He's done some Marvel too, so he's done both.
Yeah.
But he still the grades, right?
He's like he's done everything actually. He's done everything. But I guess my point is more like his feeling for how much we should stick to comics, and how much we should give new to someone to the audiences. Because bear in mind, like we wrote it in a way that if this is the only season we got, if this was the only,
Yeah. Let's
like
go
Jay is
balls out.
very, in respect to him, that dude swings for the fences.
Yeah.
That's like,
I think that
I'm sorry,
sort of
Nick,
also
go ahead.
no, that's sort of like to Zig's point, that artist saw their influence, like not holding stuff sacred so much, because Jay really kicked the door down in terms of like, no, let's do this, and they were like, okay, that's freaking awesome. Like he really
Do you have
No,
a
because,
particular
like,
example?
the chain guns. Like I very clearly remember him pitching, like, and then the Kapal pull out these miniguns. Like miniguns? That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, actually,
Like,
my sorry, Mick. Go ahead. I jumped in.
Yeah, no, it's that. It's really like he sort of set the how wide our berth we could like sort of do in terms of like reshaping stuff from the comics whilst also staying true to it. It's like, I mean, all these checks are in place. Zig, sorry.
No. I mean, yeah, he makes a good point about the chain guns, because the miniguns rather in episode 6. So he brings up that point, and then that's kind of never established that they. But it was just like an awesome moment for the Kambal to have, regardless if we haven't seen it in any of the previous episodes, because it's just like a badass moment, right? But I guess to your point more on the narrative, I think in episode 1, one of the standout notes that Jay had when we were crafting the first episode is actually when the first fight scene of Alexandra with the Aswang. Basically, if you remember the comics, the Kambal are already there.
Yeah.
So that's actually how we were mapping it out, right? So he proposed the idea that what if the Kambal weren't already there, so we can show how Alexandra, and I think it was a good point to make, can hold her own even without the Kambal. So I think there was I mean, I'll be upfront, it kind of changes how the Kambal are introduced. I think the Kambal are introduced as a more parang fighting force later in the episode, but it was very important for Jade. Let's say we need to change the scene so Alexandra becomes a stronger heroine earlier in the episode, and I think that's just one of the changes like he was alluding to. And even our ending, it's like when we got to that ending, it's one of those things that Jay has like, we need to give something that closes our season, but such a WTF moment that even like fans will hopefully want to clamor for a second season. So hopefully we are able to
We
elicit
did that.
kind of feeling.
Yeah. So it's not. Yeah. So
I will
to
eventually
Jay's
ask what
credit,
that ending means, by the way.
Well, yeah.
Here we go.
Then we'll
Yes.
interview you.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Mick, you were saying something?
Oh yeah, no, it's and like we don't need to seem also. It's like it's just the action beats that Jay was giving. It's like very very clearly for 4. Like he like one of the influence like to show like we really got along. It's like, hey, you remember in Cowboy Bebop they have these episodes where like nothing happens and it's just slow. Like we should open like that for episode 4. Like we just show Captain Guerrero going through his day and immediately that's also a great thing to play with. It's not an action beat, sure, but it's really, for a writer, it's like, okay, that's cool. Like I get the reference and I get like what you're trying to do in terms of so stuff like that. I mean, the writers' room and the story summit was really awesome in that regard.
I think when you're talking about swinging for the fences and clamoring for a second season, I think one of the positive things I've seen is that the most consistently negative thing I've heard about the show is that there's too much information all at once, and which always leads to somebody saying, I wish there were more episodes so that they could have spaced it out more. I'm like, that's the best possible negative thing you can say.
We'll take it when they want more episodes.
Yeah, we'll take
Yeah,
it.
no,
We'll
I mean,
totally take it.
yes, please.
No, but like up front, man. I mean, there were times in the writers' room and even beyond, like us and Jay were saying, why didn't we ask for 8 episodes?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that said, Tanya and Shanty mentioned that was the, to get this made and to get it, Netflix trusting us with 6 was already such a big get. We didn't want to pushed so far. That's why we wanted to cram as much. You know, sad to say, the Philippines doesn't have the kind of legacy, let's say, like He-Man or Castlevania might get.
Yeah.
This might have been our only shot. I mean, season 2 is still not a lock, so you know, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, Castlevania was a video game, so you have a big
yeah,
pre-awareness.
dude, that's why I watched it. That's why
Yeah,
I watched
Right, that's why you watched it. And then He-Man
He-Man is
already
He-Man.
is He-Man.
yeah.
So we
Yeah.
were coming at it from a book that was only distributed in the Philippines. Like it
Philippines.
sometimes
Black
made
and
its way
white.
outside,
Black,
right?
Black and white.
So it's really
Yeah.
like an unknown quantity. To even get 6 was something.
Yeah, it was really
You know,
something.
it's the
Yeah.
first Netflix original out of Southeast Asia anime, and it's from the Philippines. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like experiment
Huge.
all around, gamble
Yeah.
all around.
So just watch the series again, and then I don't think it'll be as dense.
I mean, you guys stayed. You guys
And
stayed
then the
number
numbers
one.
will go up.
You guys stayed number one on trending in the Philippines for a couple of weeks.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, that's still not real to us.
yeah. Actually, this whole experience is not real.
Yeah, it's really like
Top
we
10
always
in
say. It's like
multiple countries too.
yeah, no, I mean it's like I've never been on a list. What's this? In my life.
Parang you have.
Yeah,
What-
not the
list?
right
What
list.
list?
Not the right list.
I think one of the changes that you guys made, and I think Tanya, you're credited for this episode. Am I correct in assuming that all of you guys worked on all the episodes and then there was a head writer for each episode?
No, we broke it all together, but writing the scripts, like whoever's credited
Fine.
is there. So like, you know, I did 1 and 3, Zig did 2 and 6, and
Mhm.
Mihk did 4 and 5.
So
So-
it would be 3 because when the trailer dropped and then I saw that you guys were doing the Chanak story, I actually went, oh, they're gonna do that story. That's got the potential to, you know, be really impactful or not land well. And then as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, they toned it down. And then they get to the ending and I was like, oh my god, they did not tone it down at all.
Yeah. Like we'll lull you to sleep with disco. That's how Trese rolls. It's like here's some disco.
And I was watching it
And then
with,
have some stabbing.
Yeah.
I was watching it with my nephew and my niece, and I'm like,
How old are they?
am I a bad uncle?
Yeah, how old are they? You might be.
22 and 16.
Ah, okay,
Oh, that's
that's
so-
fine.
so
My,
not
my
bad.
nephews are 7 and 4. And
There's
they,
two and 16.
they now
there's
say
a bad
tabi-tabi
uncle
po
for you.
all the time.
Where did Marco Guerrero come from?
Marco Guerrero for 2 ended up being
Tumblr.
yeah. I mean, it's a good bridge, and it was like, you know, it was a great character to have for 2 to get us into family business, because also family of like Kapji, and then you have like, you know, Senor Armanas and Maliksi, and then you have Bagyon Electro and Bagyon Electro and Bagyon Kulimlim. So since it was about family, and then conveniently, if he's army, then we can use him, not BTS army, but army.
Yeah.
We can use him.
We don't know. We don't.
But we
judge.
don't know yet.
He might
we don't
be.
know yet.
He might be.
be.
Renee.
Could be. Could be.
So
he
then,
likes the
you know,
Cajun sauce.
Totally worked for 5 and 6, and we're just like, ooh, bonus, Darren Chris, yes.
So so he was created, would you say, out of necessity, or?
Yeah.
Well,
mean,
I
his
think if we
characters-
elaborate on it, you'll have to give us a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth season
Sixth
in a
season.
movie.
to like come up with a backstory for him, but for the most part,
Yeah.
it's like
But
for
we
family
do it.
business. For
Yeah.
family business, it fits.
Yeah.
So coming up with that sort of character to round it out, because you don't just have the supernatural family, then you have also family that you don't really see of like Kapji. So it worked out really well.
Yeah, I think it was important for us also to have representation, and hopefully we can expand on, hopefully with more episodes, is actually the more human side of it, because it's so tempting to just flood the series full of supernatural creatures, but I think it's just as challenging. I think it's more challenging actually to write, the non-supernatural part of it, that I think is just as important for the show. So we're giving the show opportunity to head in those directions.
As people who have read the comics, how would you, and yeah, obviously I've read the comics. I actually read the comics a month before I binged the show. And then I was able to watch the show, and I get to 2 points. One,
Mhm.
Nuno is a traitor. Two, Captain Guerrero dies. And what
Spoilers.
was the impetus for those particular changes? Especially
It's-
since you must have known that going into episode 6, Captain Guerrero would be a very well loved character.
Hence
That's why we
episode
did
4.
episode 4.
Pussy!
Hence episode 4.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like decisions like that are all about the arc of the main character. So
Yeah.
it's the arc of Alexandra that you follow. So when you're crafting a story, it really is serving that arc. So for Nuno to be a traitor, that helps Alexandra figure out, wow, okay, things that I thought were status quo turn out to not be that way. Now what do I do? And for Captain Guerrero, which as people have pointed out, and we knew this also, in alternate timelines, like the norm is Captain Guerrero dies, unfortunately. But in this case, he was the closest thing, aside from Hank, but at least he's out there. In a way, he's more innocent, he's, as the sort of avuncular character, the stand-in for her dad, and the warmest one, as opposed to Hank being quirky. It was a natural, he was big stakes. So if you have somebody who's big stakes taken away from you, that also is, one, it's a big turning point for the character, but two, you know how invested you are watching it as the audience member, because then you're like, okay, nobody's safe. If you're gonna kill Captain Guerrero,
Yeah.
who else is
And
gonna
if
die?
Nuno is a traitor, it's like, where are we gonna
Like,
go with this?
who- yeah,
we don't
who's-
know.
Who else is your friend? Who can you be sure of? So it's a great way of like upending, and from a story structure, it's a great way to surprise people and just keep you on your toes, where you're like, I don't know where this
Yeah.
is going. And
But
that's
they serve their purpose for sure. It's not like for shock value.
Yeah.
This ain't the Red Wedding. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you mentioned, fans gravitating to it, because the death of Captain Guerrero actually sparked a fight in my family group, because one of my, yeah, it's like my
For
my
real?
sister, so so I have like multiple sisters-in-law, and they don't really read comics. It's the husbands who do. And then when she thought like everyone had watched it, and then she dropped that, Captain Guerrero dies. And then apparently 2 of my other sisters-in-law hadn't seen it, and they went just fucking ballistic, man, because they had just seen episode 4. So when they find out, it's like war, man. And like, I was like, mute, and then I am not. It suddenly turned into like a really toxic Viber group. So
luckily they didn't be like, well, it's Zig's fault. He killed him.
It is your fault. You're the writer of that
Your
episode.
fault. You wrote that, so it's your fault.
yeah.
No, but we knew the risk that it was, but we knew the risk that we were taking by offering such a big character. But it wasn't just for, in our hearts, it wasn't just for
Yeah.
no shock value, as Tanya
It
mentioned.
served the purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still remember that story summit when we structured it. Everybody's like,
Even when we were like, nope, that's where we need to go, it was painful. It's like somebody
Painful.
literally died.
Did anybody object to it?
We saw the point of it. It
yeah.
was
Yeah.
sad, but we saw the point of it.
Tears were shed, but we got over it.
I think I don't know if it's just me and Mihk, I mean, I can speak for myself. Each time there was idea that I realized, doesn't, because we all love the comics, right? And then we're not blind to the idea, so what fans are saying, like it's not loyal enough to the comics and all that. I think it, regardless of, that's just a sense of passion.
The
But being
worst
in the writer's
criticism
room,
you can give, because every telling is different.
yeah,
True.
exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah, no, for
it's
sure.
just I've just taken it as like that's just a sign of how much they love the source material. So that doesn't mean that we should follow them, but it's just more that
Yeah.
that's just how.
Yeah,
what-
no,
the sign
I'm
of their
glad
passion.
they love it as much as that.
Yeah, so it was funny. Each time an idea that would be floated, and I personally realized that, oh my god, that's not how I imagined it. That's not like, if we were gonna have one season, that's not how I'd want it to go, but then you just kind of process it. Don't let your I mean, we should be better than just the guy that, no, that's not blah, 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 blah. No, it's like I personally had to sit with a lot of the decisions, and as Tanya said, it was the right one, I felt, and I'll stand by that. And then the decisions
sure.
we made, they're hard decisions, but we felt that it was in service to the character.
Yeah, it's also like there were people who were saying things like they were talking about Shay and Liza, and they were saying, "Oh, they don't sound like they suck because they don't sound the way that Trese sounds in my head." And I'm like,
Mm.
bar for good acting is how it sounds in your head. I've got some bad news for you.
It's something that Shanty and I had prepped Budge and Kajo with from the beginning when we started working with them. I go, look, when you're going to adapt it to another medium, there has to be changes. And everybody, it goes, for us included as an audience, sometimes with a book, you imagine it one way. It's never going to come out exactly like Milagro if it comes out exactly the way you pictured it in your head. Right? So I said, you have to be prepared for that. And we really asked them, is it something you guys are willing to deal with? And, and they're fearless. And they're like, yeah, we want to see other interpretations of the work. We want to see how people take it and run with it. So, and that's not every creator that you work with. And they were pretty fearless.
That's
about
huge.
that.
That's
It's huge. So when we, going into the story summit, like we knew there had to be shifts, but at the end of the day, you want the spirit to be authentic. You want it still to connect with how Trese, the character and the books and the world is. It's just in a different medium. And at the same time, you want to surprise people, because if they just came to watch the book, and if you just watch the panels come to life, like why would you watch something that works so well on exactly works so well on the page?
Yeah,
So,
Budjette and Kajo have been nothing but supportive of us, and I don't want to be delusional.
Suspiciously so.
Yeah, I don't want to put ourselves on a high horse and think that they were just like completely in love with everything we've done. But I think that's why they're such great artists. They understand that the show is its own thing, and it gives the opportunity for the comics and the show to exist separately and still yet be kind of like kambal. Wow.
Bringing it back, tying it together.
Shanty, which one of these two is which of the kambal?
Who's Crispin and who's Basilio?
Will be forever a secret. Will only be revealed
Season
in
3.
Season 3.
Oh man. Were you able to catch our cameos though, Duy? Were you able to? If you watch it, we're actually in some of the frames. If you're,
Four of us.
I think I did, but I definitely caught Budge and Kajo's cameo.
Oh yeah,
You
no,
can't-
I-
you can't
There's
miss
no,
that.
that's hard to miss.
Need
Yeah.
to rewatch and find us.
Well, I'll have to. I've seen it 3 times.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank
I
you
see
so
that.
much for doing that.
Well, I
Go
saw
for a
the
fourth.
the first time. The first time was because I watched it and I couldn't decide which language I wanted to watch it in.
Sure. As with most people, yeah.
I had no idea because I'm like there were some characters where I was like I think I prefer that guy in Tagalog, and then I think I prefer that one in English. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
kept on switching back and forth. So the second time I just watched it in Tagalog, and the third time I just watched it in English.
Yeah.
Just
I'm
straight-
just waiting for a cut where somebody splices all the languages together. Like, oh, I want Maliksi to be
like
in English.
a Taglish cut, right?
Yeah, I want the wind elementals to be in Tagalog, and I want Nuno to be in Japanese. I'm just waiting for that fan edit. I'm sure there are intrepid fans.
No,
out there.
there's a trailer that's multilingual, and I think they did another one with the spells that Netflix did. Another one with the
Yeah.
spells that's multilingual, which
Yeah,
is
that's
pretty cool.
Not like a full episode though. That would be
Oh, yeah.
trippy.
Did you guys have a? Well, this is probably a biased question, but you guys have a preferred language to watch it in?
I'm like the Filipino version for sure.
Yeah.
For me, it was just so refreshing. Also, if you've grown up now with dubbing, it just, and then for something that you worked on and then seeing it in that light. Because okay, personally, I didn't know that we were gonna get a Filipino
Yeah.
version till much later, so we didn't even write with that in mind. Even so,
Yeah.
it was such a big thing for me personally when I found out you were getting one and then watching it for the first time, hearing it in your native language.
Yeah, no, it's that. I mean, the Tagalog version for that, sure, because like I'm not sure if we grew up here, but like like the networks used to run dubbed anime, and I'm like that's the only way you could watch some of these shows, and it sort of captures that spirit. In spirit, not in like technical aspects, because they really knock it out of the park with this dub. But it's like that's what sort of like after school spirit. When you're watching this, you're a kid again, and like
Yeah.
that's the magic of the Tagalog dub. But
Yeah.
there's something to be said of the Japanese dub because it is like full circle. As
I know,
as a
that's-
weeb,
that's-
as a professional weeb, it's really it is really a trip to hear it in Japanese. It's like, haha, the tables have turned now, Japan.
This
Now
one
you're
season,
dubbing
the
for
table
us.
is the tables have turned for this one season.
For this one season, I have Tagalog subtitles and Japanese audio. I can die a happy man.
I working on both because we basically Shanty and I also supervise the Filipino language dub, and the English. It's different, so
Yeah.
I don't know that I don't really can say if I prefer one or the other. But there's something very emotional about the Filipino dub, but also the English, which is how it was originally recorded. Like there's some, there's great artistry, especially in terms of the voice acting or the acting and the characterizations. And to also know, maybe because I was there for the recordings of it, is that the characters the actors who came in and did the voices, and a lot of them were Filipino American and Filipino Canadian, or it's like John grew up in QC and then, was there in the US. They always bring a story to the character they portray. Like the guy who
Yeah.
does like Eric Bailon, who does General Villar, and he also does the Tamaraw Spirit. Like when he does General Villar in English, I'm like, it's so exact. Like I've heard generals speak like that. And so I asked him, dude, did you grow up in Manila? He's like, nope, Long Beach all the way. And I'm just like, wow. He's like, those are my uncles. Those are, these are the people I grew up with. And he brings that when he voices it. So for me, knowing that, it just resonates with, and they would tell us and they would tell Jay like how meaningful it was for them to portray a character that was Filipino and to actually learn a lot of stuff that they didn't know before either. So like both those languages for me have those meanings, and now with the Filipino like voice actors as well getting the spotlight, and I know how good these guys are. It's
so good.
also such a great experience to have focus on their artistry and really see where Rudolph, who's the voice director, like he turned to the technician and he's like, people are gonna think we did this was the original just because of
Yeah.
all the care they put into it.
Yeah.
So
That's
But
how
then-
I felt. That's how I felt when Tanya said, like, you gotta hear the Filipino dub. And my first reaction was like, oh wow, it feels like as if this is created as the original. That was my first immediate reaction. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
we've been working on the English dub first before we did the Filipino dub. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Tagalog dub just has that kind of flavor. Like in episode 1, as you mentioned, with when you introduce the kambal, and they say the word resbak, and then later when they make their entrance, I was watching it with people, and somebody said, "Oh, who's that?" And then somebody else said, "Resbak," right?
who's that Respa?
and then the second episode when Bagyon Kulimlim shows up, I'm switching back and forth because I love Dante Basco, and it's like really weird to hear him saying the words Alexandra Trese. But then he blows up their car, and then in the Tagalog version, the kambal goes, "Bad trip yung kotse," which is exactly
Yeah.
how you would say it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty badass. It's pretty badass.
There's something, that's why it feels like it's an option. It's not just the alternate,
Yeah.
but it's an
Yeah.
addition, because there's stuff that you get from either. Yeah, look, you have like Dante and Darren playing these small parts, but dude, like how that's our flex. Like, yeah, you have Dante and Darren in one
Yeah,
episode.
Timmy. Yeah. So watch the new tracks again for those of you who haven't.
Watch it in all languages.
Watch it all. There's something for everyone.
Yeah, I've got some friends who grew up here, but don't speak Tagalog. They watch it in Tagalog with English subtitles, and they watch it in English. So it all works. It's kind of really cool that everything has come full circle that way. Let's talk
Yeah.
For sure.
quickly about themes. You guys zeroed in on the theme of family for this. I've spoken to Budjette, and he said that it was never on his mind when he was writing it, but it's clearly in the books.
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Budget
She
actually
says
is.
she
but-
says father every other word balloons in.
I'm not my father.
I'm not my father.
I'm not my
father. It's like,
father.
oh, Alexandra, your father is this. It's like father for like the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's the one point we didn't have to argue about. It's like, this is about family, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you zero in on that theme because it's just a natural theme that you centered in on when you're reading the books, or did it have something to do with this being a Filipino work and you had to give it a Filipino stamp? And family is the center of the Filipino.
I think that's
Social
what
structure.
Jay zeroed in on for himself, because it's his experience with the books and him finding it. For me, it was definitely part of it. Like, it was the core, because you're looking at the Kambal, you're looking at the dynamic they have with Hank, and then you're looking at Alexandra mourning the loss of her parents, and then plus you're up against Kalaban, or you have allies, right? So in a way, it's this very clannish, that's how you survive, is like, the strength of your family. So for me, for us, that was like the core of the warmth of the dynamics of the relationship, where it's not just cold-blooded killing for whatever sake. There's things at stake, and it's your loved ones that you can lose. And for Jay, for him, it's like growing up in the States. For the part of his identity as a Filipino, is that family was a big part of that as well. So, which, as you point out, it is a core Filipino value for the most part.
Yeah, I don't think there was an intention, because it's Filipino, we should put a family stamp because it's a natural Filipino theme. But I think it's because we're Filipino, it's like we didn't have to make that distinction within.
Yeah, it's like you should have family in there, right?
Yeah.
It became
It's
we're
built
gonna
in.
talk about family because it became like the most natural. Only personally, as a writer, I naturally gravitate to family themes, and then when the rest of the team and Jay, just hooked on it, because that it's regardless of whether Budjette intended it or not. Yeah, I'm with you, Duy, that it's in the comic. I mean, whether or not he intended it to be.
Yeah.
And it was just so striking. And then I remember because Jay would always talk about his own daughter, because he's a young dad basically. So we just naturally kind of insert our family because we're Filipino. I think it would be very different. I think if we were like a non-Filipino, like a westernized writer's room, where we would need to find the intentional, we should make this more Filipino, so we should talk about family. But I think because we're Filipino, it just became, we're gonna talk about family. It's in the comics, and that's who we are. So that's how it made it in there.
For sure.
What were
Found or otherwise. Yeah.
what were the most Filipino things that you made sure to include in the series, aside from the backgrounds and then because
Okay,
Like in your episodes, laglagan na.
Sure.
Put it out there. Go.
Comic. You got.
One of the things that stuck me was one of my friends who, I don't know how, he got wind that like, hey, you're working on this thing, right? Like, this was before our NDA expired, and it's like, hey, you're working on this thing. Like, maybe, I don't know. Who's to say? and he goes like, man, like, if you could just tell me because like one of my favorite moments in the series reading it was like when she heals Hank with Cena.
The logo.
The logo of a famous like drugstore chain here. Like that really hit home for me. And like, I don't know, if I was working on the series, maybe I mean, of course, that made it in, but like that also gave me the germ of idea, like because there are some spells that aren't in the comics that we had to like make up for plot points and issues. And the one thing that I wanted to do is that to stay true to the comics also is that Alex uses whatever's on hand for her spells, and that's why there's a Tansan in episode 4. Because it's such for me it's such a Filipino thing. It's like you play games with it. If you grew up here, like you would like trade it in for for whatever prizes. You see that thing in Christmas. It's like it's a very like for me like a tansan is a very Filipino thing. Like it like repurposing a tansan is a very Filipino thing.
You punch a hole in it and then do a
Yeah,
string.
With the
Yeah.
string,
and then
totally.
and then it's sipa, right? It's like
Yeah.
you use it for like
Yeah.
that's why like I made sure like when it was that spell, the tracking spell, like it had to be a tansa because like that's what she had on hand. And
That
also in
tracking spell is not
episode-
in the comics, by the way. You made that up
yeah.
wholesale.
Yeah, we made it up wholesale.
Yeah.
And yeah, taho and pandesal. Only because like that's like what Zig and I eat
After a
back
24-hour shoot.
24 hours.
Yes, exactly. No, I mean like
After
when hours were
24
still
hours.
bad. When hours were still bad. It's like you walk out and it's breakfast. Like you were shooting the last few sequences of because again I are also in production. Live action production. So we walk out of the set and like it's breakfast and the whole guys like pass by. So like the end of episode 4 has that sort of feeling. It's like, okay, yeah, no, that they would buy these buy taho and like right after this kick-ass fight, like because that's their job.
Yep. I picked up on that too. I
Yeah, for
specifically like the bawal umihi dito signs and everything.
A lot of but like credit where credit is due, a lot of the background Easter eggs, that's all the artists
Okay.
and like
Yeah, it's really Jay and Jojo, they're
Going to
looking
town.
around and then they, hey, that's cool, let's
Absorbing
add
the
that.
recce
Yeah.
and like, translating that on screen basically.
Like stuff that we just take for granted as Filipinos.
Like the monoblock chairs or
Yeah.
the barricades or
The-
the gates.
I was a little
this-
disappointed. I was a little disappointed in the monoblock chair Carinderia scene that there was no cheesy 80s power ballad.
It's okay. The fans
It's,
took care of that. The fans
yeah,
took care of the
for
karaoke
sure.
version, which I love.
yeah,
My
yeah.
favorite is like the lo-fi Trese and the Carinderia like,
Yeah.
version where it's
This,
10 hours of music. Touch by touch for 10 hours.
What about you, Zig? What did you put in anything specifically Filipino on purpose to make sure?
Well, one of the things that I think, because if you hang out with us in the writer's room, there are just some jokes. Like our jokes literally just become part of the script.
Oh my
I
God.
mean, it's like our dynamic. You would think we were writing a comedy if you hung out with us in the
Yeah.
writer's room. But one of the things that I remember was the scene at the end of 2 where the Wind Girls are there, the Kambal, and they're all kind of having breakfast.
Yeah.
And then it's mentioned that Marco just got the number of
Yee-hee.
Alexandra, and then Yami, whoa, yee-hee. So that was like literally it started as a joke. It literally just started as a joke. And no, that should get into the script. That should get into the script. So yeah, that was one of those moments where that was like uniquely, at least to me, very Filipino that entered. But I guess just to write on your question about the dubbing a while back, it's not highlighted on, and I know a lot of people really enjoyed it. But one of the things that I am so proud of the team for thinking of this, like as a unit, is when we decided to have the brilliant idea, because I think it was brilliant, to have the spells in Tagalog, to have it in Filipino.
Regardless of the language.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
regardless of the language.
Yeah.
That's not because
Straight
that was
up.
we spent a lot of the time, and then because of Jay had to animate it, talking about how do these spells work? Because it's one thing to take it for granted on the panel, but to actually, what moves does she make? What did she do? Because you're gonna have to animate that stuff. So we realized that what if she did it in silence, but that's not quite awesome. And then when we came to the idea now, what if they speak Tagalog and then regardless, so it becomes this like awesome. So even when you watch the English version, I mean, when you hear that, it's some sort of if you're a foreigner, I assume it's like some sort of cryptic language.
Yeah.
But when it's like, holy shit, I understood what she's saying. I mean, I just love that that's there. I just absolutely adore that that's there.
It's like
And the
shows
fact
where
that
the spells are in Latin, right? Except now it's in
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
the deeper, like for example, if it was all in Filipino, it would be even deeper Filipino, right?
Yeah.
For the spells, like it's ancient. But so it's about language rules where if it's in English, but we do it in Filipino with no explanation. That's what I love.
Let them figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. It's like
People
we had
are
to figure
smart. I
out,
give them a
like-
lot of credit. They will figure it out.
Right. The internet exists.
Correct.
for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Tanya, you have the distinctly Filipino things in your episodes.
There's a lot, yeah. Like for example, but there's also little ones which people, because Jay had said, okay, if you guys have references, send it to us. So we compiled it with pictures. Like for example, in terms of like the bird that Miranda sort of helps find the soul find its way. Like I said, okay, you have the Maya bird, but you also have the bleeding heart pigeon that is endemic to the Philippines, or like the arsenal for Ibu. I'm like, okay, you don't put a rose, you put something that's also mystical. So I'm like, okay, Dama de Noche here. This is what, so I sent like pictures and things like that. So, but that's only known to me. Like everyone will be like, yeah, we don't know what that is. But for me, the choice to have in the English version, to have them speak with what I'm calling the Manila accent, for want of a better term, because it was going to be the first time anyone was going to do that for an English language, anything. But it made sense because he didn't want them to have like a neutral accent, which then sounds maybe more American. You wanted to at least have something that is of the place in a clear way, that you could then transition to speaking Filipino for the spells. So for me, that choice was a good choice. And people are weirded out, but it's just because people aren't used to it. So this is the first time it's there, right? So
Yeah.
then we build on that.
Yeah, I've seen mixed reactions to that particular decision, but like,
Because
what a decision! I didn't expect it, and it was an awesome decision to make.
yeah,
How I appreciate that everybody has a different level of thickness to their accents.
mm-mm.
Mm.
Totally. And I feel like it's none of those accents. I've heard them all in Manila in the range. Now, if you want to be strict in terms of like, okay, context of that character and that person, that's like, expert level. We're talking about like clarity, but still the flavor
Mhm.
in English, which you're presuming an international audience also hears.
Yeah,
Right? And that's why varying degrees of how they use the accent, is there, but the clarity is also still there. So you're balancing like the clarity for an international audience, but not sacrificing any of the characteristics of it.
would you say that the level of thickness of each of their accents would maybe indicate the likelihood of speaking in Tagalog or English, if in quote unquote in reality? Because, for example, Alexandra strikes me as a type of character who would probably speak mostly in English, whereas somebody like the Kambal, no, they might be a mix. But Jobert would definitely speak in Tagalog.
Jobert might also be a mix. Even
Yeah.
for me, it was always about character. I mean, you're not even like talking about, this is more about character almost, even though some people will argue, yeah, but whatever, social status, class, or, socioeconomic status more in terms of that player level, what part of society they're from. But actually for me, it becomes more in terms of character when you think about the gruffness of the military guys, or
Mhm.
Hank being quirky comic. You're not thinking about like, okay, what's the background? You're just thinking like, what is this character representing? And that's even me, somebody who's Filipino, but I'm also looking at it from, okay, when you're looking at it from a maybe not completely outsider's point of view, but even if you're just thinking about it on a character perspective, I think it's more reflective of, okay, what's the personality of that person?
Shanty, what are some of the most distinctly Filipino things that resonated with you and made you remember your time living in Manila?
For me, I think the city, because I'm still an outsider, but the way, I mean, look at those painting. I mean, like, you enter Manila and like, yeah, that's it. And like the background that Tanya has, and I kept saying like, oh, like it's so familiar, especially when you've already lived in the city, and like, oh, this is like this
Okay.
road, like
You
that
can go to
road.
Greenbelt.
Exactly. So for me, it's the city, I think. And that's why I also love 13 Station, like what Tanya was saying. Like, oh, is this like such a great way of entering the city, especially if the audience is non-Filipino, and just like, oh, you enter the world of Manila that has so many sides, so many faces.
Let's talk about the not confirmed but alluded to season 2.
I'm like,
And should
What's
we?
there to
I think
talk
we should,
about?
yeah.
Yeah.
What's there to talk about?
It's not there yet.
Hypothetically, in the
Very
hypothetical season
hypothetically.
2, would we see? I mean, you guys in the end credits, you introduced a character who's not in the comics. So, how much would it be safe to say that you would be taking more liberties if you get more episodes?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Who's to say? Who's to
I
say?
think I think well how because yeah, let's not jinx it. There's really no you'd be the first to know if we knew.
Exactly.
Comics
You
Cube
know before
exclusive.
us.
But yeah, I think the what Jay really intended and the team intended, it's that by the time you reach episode 6, actually, if it wasn't clear for you by episode 1, it's the spirit of the comics, but it's not the comics.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can expect for season 2. Should there be a
Many
season
years to
onward.
come.
Yeah. Many years to come.
If ever.
Yeah. But I mean, we don't want to ditch it because I mean, there's so much. Budge and Kajo have so great, their stories in the comics are fantastic. So I don't want to say that we're gonna abandon it. That's be foolish to say that we'd abandon everything.
Yeah. There's
I
too
think-
much to mine from the
Yeah,
books
yeah.
and the series that
exactly.
we want to see on screen.
Yeah.
So
We'll still have the same problem we had with season 1. It's like what's gonna make it in, right?
Dude, this is the most we've ever talked about this question. Comics.
and
Cube
yet
exclusive.
there's not saying much. So it's like, I'm not getting
Without
anything,
saying.
you guys. You suck.
But
Yeah,
it's entertaining.
for
We're
sure.
glad you're entertained.
Yeah. That's what we're here for.
Can we do a quick bullet round to close it off? So I'll just ask a series of questions. You can just do
Sure.
short answers. Who was your favorite character to watch and to work on?
So hard.
We can
Come
start
on.
with Zig because he's the one here on my.
I think the Senor, as in easy answer for me. It was,
Really?
Yeah, it was because he was so exciting and engaging to write, even if he just shows up for like a scene. Because one, it was the old guard basically of he's like the upper echelon of the mga Encanto or the supernatural, and to see him being able to have the honor of rewriting actually, because that scene is really drawn from the comics, but it was just so exciting to have the opportunity, because my god, Duy, we wanted to write everyone from the comics, but we just wanted to cram in so much stuff. But yeah, I mean, just have the opportunity to kind of jump into that little sliver of that character, because should we have more seasons, that scene will be the basis of the Senior moving forward. And I am sure him alongside the War Council. Oh man, I just wanna watch the next season. So bad.
An extension to your question before.
Yeah, dude. I mean, no bullshit. Like when you finish it, like, can we just watch this show?
Yeah.
Can we watch,
Oh wait, we have to
all
write it
of-
first.
Yeah.
We have to write it first.
Shanty, who was your favorite character?
Ooh, tough. I like I don't know, I love Hank, I have to say. And the transformation of Hank in the comic and then to the show. It's such a delight to follow Hank.
Making him the worst kind of fanboy was like a genius move, by the way.
Thanks.
Super great.
The best kind of fanboy. The best.
Yeah.
The best, the type that says, I'm not one of those weird fans, but I know everything about you.
Actually.
Yeah, he's funny.
Mick, who is your favorite character?
Oh yeah, no, the Kumbal for sure. I mean, clearly,
Clearly.
I love them. I love them himbos. Like,
Do you have a
yeah,
favorite
no, only
Kumbal?
also because it's a found family angle. Like I'm a sucker for found family. It's really like the adopted. Like I'm an older brother, so having little brothers is like
Little brother.
a little brother. Like that's it. My brother is way bigger than I am. Like he's one of those little brothers that like towers over me, and it's like it's really not the. But I didn't really write the Kumbal with that in mind. It's like it's really. I wrote the Kumbal as the Kumbal. But yeah, no, they're so great. They're dumb and fun and like loud, but like they got a beating heart behind them that I think. Should we get more episodes? Like we'll just keep saying it. I don't know. Like I really just want to make them like doing a beach episode. I'm really manifesting this freaking beach episode.
I will get to that. Tanya, you have a favorite?
It's hard. Like working on it, it's different from working and watching it. I think working on it, that other side of Hank was fun to write. And also figuring out, the warmth of Alexandra was fun to figure out as well. But watching it, and it came as a surprise because also it's when I saw the actress like doing the lines was the emissary, who, it surprisingly came out because I remember working on it. I'm like, okay, this is probably the most eloquent of the supernatural beings that we're going to have because she's like the ambassador. Every word is, every word has meaning. So she needs to be careful because she represents Ibu, which by the way, in Indonesian means mother.
His mother.
Wow.
Yes. So, but is the Manobo name for the goddess of death. But so that's the connection also between like, in Malay and like in Filipino or like the Philippines. So so I was trying to write it where like, okay, if you're an emissary, then you choose your words carefully. And then when the actress delivered it, I'm like, ooh, it makes her sound super mysterious. And then when they animated her, I was like, ooh. And now he's like, there are other people also who have that like connection to the emissary, but that's something I really wasn't expecting. It's a minor character. But then when you watch it, it's like, okay, now with the combination of everyone who worked on it, from the actress, the animator, the designer, and the writer, she becomes this thing. Like, how magical is that? Like, it's like she manifested herself.
People love the emissary. That's
right?
a minor character that got a lot of play in social media.
The fan art is amazing. Like
Fan art amazing.
So thirsty.
The cosplay for like her is amazing too.
Speaking of thirsty, in a hypothetical season 2, would you use that random bare-chested aswang with a jacket that's too small for his body?
Who's to say?
Dominic?
He has a name, guys. On the record, his name's Dominic.
Yeah.
So
they know. No, the fans know his full name, which is from the comic. Like whole like 4 names.
But there are stragglers who's like, who is this hot? Like nameless as well.
Yeah, and the fans let him know.
Yeah, but it's Jay's fault for making him that hot because he's like, I want a jacket that doesn't really cover anything except his arms. So Matt Yang King, who voices Dominic, we're like, dude, you're gonna be like the hottest aswang ever in cinematic history.
In the land.
You guys got one of those memes too. It's those memes that are like, I watched Trese for the plot. And then the plot is just all of the characters being
correct.
Hot.
Yeah.
There's even Sexy Nuno, which I was shocked at.
Oh my god.
Somebody put together Sexy Nuno.
Rule 43, man. What you gonna do?
What is Alexandra's most powerful weapon? Is it Sinag or her Nokia phone?
Friendship.
You know it. I like that answer. I'll stick with that answer.
The power of friendship and family.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
man, the fact that the Nokia phone can be
can withstand
Yeah, dude.
explosions.
so with Sinag.
I love
Yeah.
Nokia phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to throw some money at us.
I was telling my friends that the two most unrealistic things about the show are the lack of traffic and the fact that the Nokia phone broke.
Yeah. How dare they?
Because that
Yeah.
thing is
Well,
Well,
those things are invulnerable.
we had to set the stakes, Duy. Like,
Yeah.
But I was
when
really
the
glad for
Nokia
that.
phone breaks, you know it's business.
It's like tears falling.
But I like
the
that you
rain.
took San Telmo off the board before the big fight. Because I feel like that was necessary to
Yeah.
kind of build up
For sure,
Alexandra.
yeah.
Okay. What does the last line of the show mean?
What do you think it means?
The after credit scene? Doesn't she just say her name?
No, the one before the
Trese.
credits.
Oh, that's your question.
You
man.
wasted your question.
Yeah, you wasted your last. That's not the last line.
And
And leave.
Because I'm not getting anything out of that question.
So this is a perfect opportunity to invite everyone to watch. And now on it, what are we? Third week? Fourth
Now on
Fourth
its
week.
fourth
week?
week.
Fourth week. So you can find out what it means.
Yeah. Tell us in the comments below what you think.
Hit that,
Like and
What
subscribe.
that last
smash
line
that like
means.
button, subscribe.
Right?
That's actually a good place to wrap it up. Everybody watch.
we heart your Duy. Thank you.
Thanks for doing my job for me, guys.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, we know your inner shield, Duy. You're about the content.
We told you it was gonna be chaotic. Like this is what happens when Team Trese comes in.
It's a miracle the show got written.
Well, it's true though, because like I think a lot of people say that horror writers tend to be funny and comedy writers tend to be morbid.
We're both.
Thank you everyone
Jokes
for
on
coming on the
you.
show. Everybody, click like, share,
Thanks
and
so much,
subscribe, and
Thank
go
you
watch
so
Trese
much,
on
Duy.
Netflix.
Thank you
Been
so
so
much.
much
for
Thank you so
having me.
fun.
much.
Thank you so much.